Art of the Rural is honored to support 5 Plain Questions. We are a collaborative organization that works to resource artists and culture bearers across the country. Together, we build relationships, change narratives, and bridge divides. Across the last 15 years, we've collaborated with individuals and communities from a range of cultural and geographic backgrounds to contribute towards a more equitable and healthy future for rural and Indian country. We invite folks to check out some of our work. Our rural-urban exchange strengthens intercultural networks through a locally focused creative leadership program. Our Spillway initiative supports artists and culture bearers to cultivate relationships along the upper Mississippi River region. And our High Visibility initiative creates podcasts, exhibitions, and publications that share nuanced and complex perspectives on contemporary life in rural and Indian country. If folks would like to learn more about our work, please visit artoftherural.org.
Hello, and welcome again to another episode of 5 Plain Questions, a podcast that proposes 5 questions to Indigenous artists, creators, musicians, writers, movers and shakers, and culture bearers, people in the community that are doing great things for their communities. I'm Joe Williams, your host for this conversation. My goal is to showcase these amazing people in our Indigenous communities from around the region and country. This week, we begin a multi-part series in conjunction with Art of the Rural, an arts nonprofit organization that's based out of Rochester, Minnesota. Founded in 2010, Art of the Rural is a collaborative arts and culture nonprofit organization that works to resource artists and culture bearers across the country to build the field, change the narrative, and bridge divides. I'm excited to bring to you conversations I'm having with artists and creatives that they've been working with, some of whom are former guests of this program. The first in this miniseries is a returning guest from Season 4, Xavier Tavera. As we introduced him in the podcast in 2023, he's a Minnesota-based photographer born and raised in Mexico City. After moving to the United States, Xavier learned what it felt like to be part of a subculture, the immigrant community. Subjected to alienation, has transformed the focus of his photographs to share the lives of those who have been marginalized. His incredible images have offered insight into the diversity of numerous communities and given a voice to those who are often invisible. Xavier has shown his work extensively in the Twin Cities, nationally and internationally. His work is part of the collections of the Minnesota Institute of Art, Minnesota Museum of American Art, Minnesota Historical Society, Minnesota Historical Center, Ramsey County Historical Society, and the Weisman Art Museum. He is the recipient of the McKnight Fellowship, Jerome Travel Award, States Arts Board, and Brown Kia Scholarship. We sat down over Zoom in early November of 2024, just before the national elections. So the conversation starts out in anticipation of what the landscape is going to look like. With that said, let's jump into 5 more questions with Xavier Tavera. Xavier Tavera, thank you so much for returning to the podcast and coming back. Like we had just had talked about a few moments ago, this is sort of a new one for the podcast, where former guests and old friends come back and we continue the conversation from before. And I think this episode aired in April of last year, of 2023. So it's been about a little over a year and a half, I think, since we've sat down. But yeah, how have you been?
I've been great. Thank you so much, Joe, for inviting me one more time to chat. It's always good conversations that I with you. Is it through the podcast or in person? So I appreciate that. I've been good. I've been very good.
What have you been up to lately? I mean, the world is kind of upside down right now. Of course, it's
Yeah.
for reference to listeners later down the road. There's a big election coming tomorrow. We have no idea what's going to happen. Those who are listening knows what happened, so they have the advantage over us on this. But yeah, how are you navigating this space right now? This last year or so.
Oh, it's been tough. It's been tough, right? Testing democracy in the United States to the fullest, right? Um, having all these questions about um, what is going to happen, what what line and what path does this country is going to take. I think is politically very important, and also around the world, we have several wars going on, and it goes back to the same to ego. Well, egos. You have to have an ego, but um, the careless about each other, the
Mm.
careless notion that we have towards each other, and the amount of greed that there is, it reflects in this right massive world events that are very worrisome.
Yeah.
And of course, right, we as artists trying to do something with our art, try to put something out there that raises some questions and have conversations with people. And that's the majority of us, that's what we why we do art, to learn a little bit about ourselves and about others and have conversations. And that's probably something that we're not doing enough.
Mm.
It's kind of crazy, but at this point, half of the country thinks that the other half is stupid, and we don't want to talk to each other, and that's problematic. That's problematic. We might have different points of view. I have my points of view and I defend them, and I think I'm right, and probably half of the time I'm not. But we are not sitting down and talking to other people that don't think the way that we do.
Yeah.
We are in our own little world, and we don't have the time. Maybe if we have the time and if we have an ear, we could listen, and somebody can listen to us, not to convince somebody or we should be convinced, just to hear about what other people that don't think like us uh, think and go about their world, what is important for them. I think this world could be more civil and maybe less complicated if we have that time to sit down and have those conversations. So yeah, it is it is a complicated time.
It is. It is. I think to all that you've said, it's we're also in a place where we we do a lot of our expression through social media, where there's this veil between us and the the rest of our community, and so a lot of people end up um, saying things that I don't think they would ever say in front of other people,
Yeah.
and they take positions and they build off those things, or they enter their echo chambers and just spin and ruminate these ideas that I think among regular conversation uh, they would sort themselves out, but that's not where we are.
No, we're screaming into our devices and expecting no answer, with this urgency for people to hear our point and our point only.
Hmm.
And our activism uh, is getting dwarfed into liking or not liking somebody's comment, instead
Hmm.
of conversing. I mean, all of us have so much in common, but maybe we don't want to see it because we are so entangled, right, in
Hmm.
these new ways of communicating that are not the most fruitful.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the the great thing about these conversations that we have, the this podcast, a lot of times, some of the decisions that went into creating this podcast was that initially the visual portion was removed in the presentation. It was not. It currently still is an audio podcast, but the intent was for the listener to be able to just tune in on the voice of the guest and to try to relate to the individual, um, just by listening. By taking time and relating to the experiences, the fears, the hopes of the guest. And we both, in the previous job and the people I work with now, I mean, we appreciate the time that the guests take to sit down and share their thoughts with us. As as much courage as it takes these days to be able to share oneself to an audience. It's
Yo,
difficult.
it's amazing. It's amazing that all of a sudden, I mean, we communicate a certain way as visual artists,
Hmm.
and all of a sudden, not having the visual, right? It forces us to think and to attempt to be a little articulate, and explain other points of view that right might resemble our visual art. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's jump into these new questions that I have, um, and yeah, we'll just take it from there. So, uh, how you know this one's going to cover sort of evolving perspectives. Speaking of which, right? How have your experiences and perspectives on storytelling and representation evolved since your career began with photography and film? Um, and are there any sort of specific milestones that influenced this growth?
Well, I mean, it is always evolving, and I'm always trying new things. And I think that the milestones will be the ones that are experienced. Meaning, when I did my veterans project, that project taught me a lot. Taught me a lot about communication. Taught me a lot about asking the right questions to these folks. It taught me to listen. It taught me to pay attention on certain aspects of their lives. And in this specific one, the veterans, it was quite rewarding because most veterans will not disclose to their immediate family what they went through when they were in service. And me, somebody from the street, right? They have nothing to shelter me from, and they will disclose, I mean, intricate stories, very personal, very intimate stories that wouldn't disclose to their close loved ones. And I feel enormously privileged about that. So the same stories that I'm seeking are teaching me how to move forward and always trying different things. My work tends to be a little political, but I'm also trying to change it. I mean, it's still I think all work is political, but not overtly political. In 2 days, I'm traveling to Chile to hear the stories of lighthouse keepers, and they have very interesting lives, and I want to hear precisely from them what is this notion of solitude
Mm.
and how are they built in order to withstand 3 to 5 months in the Strait of Magellan, in a lighthouse by themselves. Right now, in contemporary times, we can't be with ourselves. We are waiting for the bus, and it's going to be 3 minutes. We're going to pull out our device to be entertained or distracted. And in the 60s, 70s, 80s, these men had books and have had a radio to communicate with the outside world, not the outside world because they were outside with the rest of the world. So I wanna talk to them. These 80-something-year-old men
Mhm.
that spend their lives frequently in remote areas and thinking and knowing themselves better than anyone, and we're not allowing ourselves to do that anymore. So I don't know. I don't know. To your question, that specific project is going to teach me an enormous amount. Yes, the outcome is going to be some photos of the lighthouses, portraits of them, but the amount of learning that I need to do is enormous. And probably with that, to tell a fair and accurate story to the viewer. It keeps evolving. It keeps evolving. And now, right, I do some filmmaking and I do photography, still photography, and I still believe that I'm giving half-ass story when I put these portraits with these photos with these still images out. We're missing. I'm missing a lot. I'm missing all the conversations that I have with people. If it was cold, if it was hot, what did it smell? If the rooms that I'm in with these people are welcoming, if there's tension in the air, all that is unfortunately is for me to keep.
Hmm.
It's very hard for me to tell the whole entire story. And right with that information that I know that is missing, trying to do the best with each story that I take, with each encounter that I have with different people.
Do you ever feel that there's an opportunity to go back and retell that story? If you have a way of accessing some of that information to be able to express it and tell that story in a different way.
Yeah, oh no, absolutely. I mean, so this past week, I visited three classes, three different classes, two at the University of Minnesota and one at the Minneapolis College of Art and Design. And actually, a fourth one, I met with a group of photographers as well that wanted me to talk about my photography. And then I can, right there, we're seeing the images projected, and I can fill in with their questions and with my narration of the images, how what was the experience. And actually, with the photographer, with a group of photographers, they were telling me, "Are you writing, or are you putting a big label on these images?" And I'm not, because the need for that rest of the story, I think it's important. I still don't know how to address it, but eventually, right, I will attempt to do something better. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. So, given your ongoing exploration of cultural identity through your work, how do you think the next generation of artists can effectively capture and express their own cultural narratives?
Ooh, that's a complicated one.
Yeah.
I mean, I can talk to about myself and the issues that I have and the obstacles that I have with different institutions and galleries and museums and publications, right, to try to
Hmm.
get this out. But I'm interested in the new technologies that are there to tell these stories. Some of them might seem a little deeming, might seem a little way too much, and we don't know what to do with these technologies. And I'm talking about AI, and I'm talking about other ways to address some stories. But at the end of the day, I mean, I rely on the most basic one, that is the oral one, and is the image one, that we can tell stories um, by showing these different images and talking about them. And some of them are just an excuse to open uh, uh, lines of communication with other people. I do not have the last word when I put something in the wall or when I project something. Um, I hope I don't have the last word. And this is just a way of opening a conversation with other people that might either want to know more or have questions about it or have their own stories to contribute to the stories that I'm trying to tell. Um, I don't know. I'm curious. I'm curious about what new generations are going to do and what are they trying. And some of them are incredible. Some of them are very ingenious and very effective. Again, new technologies, new ways of communicating, other than right the regular social media that we were talking about. I
Hmm.
think it's going to be interesting.
Hmm.
It's going to be interesting that we think about how to not just to tell them, but how to receive them and archive them and all that jazz.
Yeah. So, thinking about some of your current projects that have been out there, deported veterans, border saints. What has been the feedback you've received from your audience on these projects?
That's a very important question. So I have right now about five different projects that are advancing, and when I give these talks at the colleges or universities, right, I have my spiel. It's like this is what happened, this is what I encounter, these are the stories, this is the people that I want you to meet. But the new ones I don't, and I have right now um, a friend of mine purchased a coat from a designer, and the coat is made out of American flags. And I had uh, a lot of problems with the icon of the American flag. And when I get to present. Actually, the project is currently going. Yesterday, I photographed another portrait. We are asking people to take that long coat and post. And usually there are people that have strong personalities and they are wearing something that is traditional for their culture. Yesterday, I photographed an Aztec dancer, and the shoot took somewhere around 20 minutes. But the conversation before and after lasted 2 3 hours.
Mm.
And I am very clumsy at when I was showing this specific work that is very new to students. I was apologizing because I was being very clumsy about about it, and and they had a lot of questions about where was I, how was I seeking out the people, and who was contributing to the project, and all of that. So yeah.
In my experience, doing exhibitions in the past, there were, and even with this podcast, I have been able to identify different audiences um, that have either come to the exhibitions or listened to this podcast. And how how has your work resonated with folks from within your community that have seen your work as a not as opposed, but then also folks from the general population um, that have experienced your work as well? How has there been key differences in the perception of your work, and uh, has it surprised you, or does it sort of confirm a few things that maybe
It
have stuck?
informs it informs a lot of things. There's a common knowledge in my community about certain things that I use.
Mhm.
I use a fair amount of religious iconography, And I know if I'm talking to somebody from my culture, they will immediately get that or question that in an interesting way. And somebody from another culture, they will be more cautious about asking questions, even if I'm very open all the time to be questioned about what I'm doing. And it is radically different. Let me give you an example. I have an exhibition at the Minnesota Museum of American Art right now, and I have a triptych, and it's the Sacred Heart. I was born Catholic, but I had a lot of difficulties with the church. So at a very young age, I veered away from that. My mom is a Catholic. My father was a Mason. So there was a lot of information fitting my brain and my soul back then. And I was always questioning those icons, but I liked them a lot. How um, crude and how sometimes violent, right? In the Baroque period, they have been. Um, and when I showed two Sacred Hearts, right, I show them both man and a woman with all the regalia of the Sacred Heart, and there's a lot of signifiers that people might miss, right? In one hand, there's the Holy Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and in the other hand, is usually pointing to the heart. But in this case, the talent is not pointing to the heart; is making a gang gesture with the hand, and a lot of people will miss that. It's like that's a funny way to right to carry the hand. And I had to explain, well, I mean, one is the Latino culture, the other one is the gang street culture, the other one is right. So there's many cultures that I tap into, and the majority of the people that are out of those cultures is like I have no idea what that is. It just looks odd, right? It looks something is off.
Hmm.
And that was the whole point of it, right? To show the East and the West as a means of colonization, right?
Hmm.
The colonization uh, it was pushed from the East to the West with all this religious iconography.
Hmm.
So I'm making them aware of that type of colonization through religious icon. Some people will get it right away. Some people will say like, no, no, I need more. I need more information, and that's okay. I don't expect because it's coded, and it's coded on purpose. I don't expect everybody to know that right away.
That must be exciting uh, for people who understand those things to see those images in your work.
Completely, completely, and it goes so many ways. I photograph a very good friend of mine, and she showed that portrait to her dad. She's Colombian. Her father is back in Colombia, and he was saying like, well, that hand, I'm not sure about that because they're very Catholic, right?
Yeah.
So it's already right away he got it, and he was questioning. He's like, oh, that might be problematic there, and so there was a little bit of tension amongst all of us, and
Interesting.
well, that's the purpose also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, can you share? This might get a little personal here, but would you be able to share maybe a particular challenging moment in your artistic journey and how you were able to overcome it? Um, and did that have an influence on how you approach your craft since then?
So there's a lot of I mean there's a lot of problems, right? And one of them will be access to uh, representation of uh, Latino and Native folks and Black folks, right? In in institutions. That is one of the major challenges that that are there, right, in front of us. I know you were asking about a personal, right, challenge in my practice,
Mhm.
but to overcome a fair representation in institutions, right? I think it's also important for us that all of a
Yes.
sudden, right, we get tired of sitting in our studios and waiting for somebody to discover us, or knocking in so many doors and having so many rejections, both within institutions and within grants and all that. That it gets highly frustrating. But at the end of the day, I mean, we really want to have uh, communication with other cultures, with institutions and whatnot, and we keep trying with that we have, and sometimes it works, and sometimes we get an opportunity and somebody will call us because they heard or saw our work somewhere, and then they want to showcase it as well. Personally, I avoid having those difficulties because um, I'm an anxious person and I have to have somewhere around 5 different projects at the same time. And way 20 years ago, I used to have one and push it right with all everything that I can. And when that project wasn't getting traction, I will get super frustrated and super anxious. So now, if one of the 5 is not working, it's going to be okay because another one is going to, right, have more traction and try to get ahead, and I'm going to push that one. Like that, a lot of the lagging projects have been left behind and new ones have arisen. But I have somehow fabricated a way, right, to, if one is not working, right, something else. So I can push my uh, I can push my intuition right to another one,
Mm.
and have it flow. But as everybody else, right? I mean, I can tell you the different aspects that different artists have. My wife, Maria Cristina Tavera, she wants to tell me all her process, right? And we sit down and I listen and I give my opinions, and then see how those projects are advancing. And she comes to me and is like, "Tell me about what you're doing," and I'm like, I'm not. I'm going to tell you when it's done." And it's like, "No, I want to see them. Show me your computer. What are you working right now?" It's like, "I can show you, but I rather not, because right there's more questions that are going to arise when we converse, and I rather save those questions when the project is culminated and they say like, here, what do you think about this, as opposed to, I'm gonna do this with this process, and what do you think about that, because it's going to be way more confusing. So I have learned, right, age age makers do safety nets and safety filters in order to keep advancing. So that might be a couple of them
Mm.
to overcome some difficulties. Yeah.
Mm. I feel like you just gave me a warning for my next question. Then, yeah, looking forward. Do you have any aspirations of where your work would like to go?
Yeah. Again, that's another very important question, because um, how I work, there's always a sense of urgency.
Mm.
There's always a sense of like that I'm running out of time, and that I need to do things. And a lot of times I don't think and process what I'm going to do, or think or process where is this work going to go, or where am I going to be professionally in the next 3 to 5 years. That might be another one of those age filters that we were talking about, that I'm protecting myself.
Mm.
And I mean, yes, I have aspirations to complete some publications, do a couple books, right? Complete some of the projects that I've been doing. I have aspirations if I have some solved opportunities, that how can those opportunities help me to finish some of the projects. But I think keeping going has helped me a lot. Maybe as I age, right, I'm gonna have the wisdom of slowing and sitting down and saying, okay, what is happening here? Why are we doing this? And what is going to be the outcome? As for now, I'm getting to the age, but I'm not getting to the wisdom part, right? I'm still like urgently doing everything that I can. Let me give you an example. Right now, I am on a sabbatical from Carleton College, is the institution that I'm working for right now, and I proposed one project, and they accepted it. They gave me funding, and I'm so happy. But that project has turned into three, and I'm thinking, I'm not sure. I mean, I am super privileged of getting a sabbatical, right? Most people go throughout the whole life not getting this time for them. So I think that I have to take advantage with everything that I have, and I'm overdoing it. I've been traveling nonstop. In 2 days, I'm going to Chile to meet these lighthouse keepers. That was not included in my initial project. At the end of this year, I'm going to try to finalize a book that I'm doing with an academic from NYU, and that was not in the plans either, right? So everything, it just gets augmented more and more and more. And I'm not sure if I know how to do it any other way. Just pile it all up and try to sort it out as I go. And often I think it'll be good to just breathe a little bit, think, and be more strategic. But I don't know. Hopefully that comes. Hopefully I'm praying for that thing to enlighten me, and I can do that in some years.
Hmm. Hmm. So, do you have? Well, you've mentioned the upcoming trip and the upcoming project. What's on the horizon for you? Where can where can our audience find your work at?
So right now there's a exhibition that I curated at the Minnesota Museum of American Art, 15 Latin artists, uh, and I included myself in it. Again, because we were talking about representation and lack of representation for our communities, and so that is going to be current all the way till January, so people can go and see that. The museum is for free. I have a couple images in Rochester. There's a technical college over there, and I have a couple pieces there. For next year, I have a couple opportunities. One of them is going to be at Silverwood, and I'm going to have a solo show there, reflecting about the park, and I'm very interested in that park because um, people of color were never included since the 1920s, and now there's a lot of effort to include. And I'm not talking about artists, I'm talking about just the park goers. And now there's a lot of push to diversify that in a very interesting way.
Hmm.
So to tell some of those stories through photography is going to be super interesting. And I have another opportunity. I've been adding year after year to this project about the border. and uh, I um, I've been asked to show that in a museum, and I'm super excited about that opportunity. And that actually those two opportunities are going to happen in September. So I gotta work in order to tell some of those stories in an accurate way.
If we could pivot just a little bit here, you have worked with art of the rural in the past.
Yeah,
It emphasizes the importance of rural art and culture in the broader context.
yeah.
How did that experience, or did that experience shape your understanding of community dynamics? What insights did you gain about that role of art in the rural spaces compared to urban environments?
I believe that, I mean, I grew up in Mexico City. There's an enormous urban space, right? I'm very attracted to urban spaces. But since working for Art of the Rural, I've been paying attention. And a lot of the work that I do is actually outside the cities, outside in rural areas where art is very much needed, and conversations are very much needed, and acknowledgement of people there is very much needed. In the past, I've worked in Crookston, Minnesota. Now I'm working intensely since I'm working in Northfield, Minnesota, with Carleton College. I've done a couple projects, and one of, actually, I forgot to mention, one of them is currently going. I'm working with the Latino population in Faribault, Minnesota, and I'm doing family portraits. And it's very interesting to dive deep into these communities and have a reciprocity there. They want to be seen, they want to be acknowledged. Maybe I can be the vehicle for that. And of course, I mean, it's always uneven, right? I'm going to gain more, meaning they're inviting me to their homes, to the little trailer homes. We call them las trailas. And, and I'm having conversations inside these spaces with them. And it's incredible. It's incredible. And like tapping into the history of how these communities arrived here, and what are they up to, and what are their struggles, and how are they organized, right? They're incredibly organized. Just recently they passed a legislation that will enable everybody to gain a driver's license, right? And they were organizing and having workshops and having a lot of information for people to gain their licenses. And they talk to different police departments, right? People in Faribault sometimes work all the way here in Northfield, and they talk to the Northfield police. They talk to the Faribault police. They talk to the Dundas police that they don't want to acknowledge any. Right? They are. It's like it doesn't matter if we see a brown person going back, we're gonna stop them. It's like, well, I mean, this is where we're working, and these are the difficulties. So to learn all that is so rewarding. Again, I feel like I'm taking more than I'm giving. And it's important to not only, right, as an extractive way, going there and taking and doing something, but giving. So I'm talking, well, I'm not talking, but I'm going to give all this collection to the Faribault Historical Society as a statement. We were here at this time, right? Have this, deal with this, archive this, and I don't know. I don't know. I think as an urban person, the rural has been very important. All the time has been very important to me. Historically, migrant farm workers were some of the first Latino folks that came up here, and how do they deal with different communities in this part of the world. I think it's important to know those stories, the resilient nature of those families that actually planted the ground for a lot of us to come here, right? So it is important, and I didn't acknowledge that I was just doing stuff in Minnesota, but right, knowing that difference, right, between the urban and the rural, and what is happening there, and what stories come out of there. It happened because our art of the rural, because I wasn't acknowledging, right? It's like this is a different sector of the community that needs attention. Hopefully, I'm going to be doing another project uh, in in starting in January for next year in the west part of Minnesota. And there's a community college there that is also asking me to go on to uh, uh, talk to the Latinos there. There's a fair amount of um, sugar beet harvesting and meat packing plants that attracts uh, Latin population here. So to go there and talk to them, document them, try to do a good representation of them is something that I seek now.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, I mean, your presence and the work you do. I mean, you're on the one hand, you're preserving a moment of time and showing the work and the existence of these folks that are here that may not be captured otherwise. So you, I would argue that you are returning something very valuable, and it's wonderful to hear that this work is happening.
Thanks for those words, because sometimes, I mean, I don't want to be the person who goes there, extracts, and then gains something from that extraction. There's always the reciprocity. It's like, what can I offer, what can I
Mm.
give? And sometimes it's not so tangible, but you're right. I mean, those stories uh, in, in this time, specifically in this time, in 2024, 2025, right? What was happening here, for people who might see these projects in 10, 20, 50 years, I think is going to be helpful.
I believe so too. Well, Javier, thank you so much for coming back and sitting back down with me and having a conversation. Uh, is there anything you would like to leave our listener before we sign off?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, thank you so much, Joe. I mean, your perseverance in keeping these conversations open, and I know it's a lot of work. I know it's an important task, and I thank you for that. I thank you for inviting me one more time to talk to you. I always enjoy sitting down, and also, I mean, reflecting on what I'm doing, and how can it be meaningful. Um, and I don't know. I mean, hopefully I can share more in these next years about what I'm doing, and how is it evolving, and how is it uh, being considered in Minnesota.
Well, we look forward to joining you on your journey and catching up and seeing what you're doing next. So, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that does it for this episode of Five Plain Questions. I want to thank Javier again for his time and sharing his story with us. Having the opportunity to sit back down and learn what's going on with him today and his work with Art of the World has been a wonderful experience. He's always thoughtful. He's always so open in sharing what's going on. I enjoy every conversation that I have with Javier. So Javier, thank you so much for joining us. 5 Plain Questions is made possible with the support of Art of the Rural. Art of the Rural is a collaborative organization working to resource artists and culture bearers across the country, building relationships and changing narratives. To learn more about their work, visit artoftherural.org. I want to thank you for joining us and spending your time listening to what I feel is a very important story and perspective from our community. Please join us next time as we speak with another incredible person. I'm Joe Williams. You can find me on our Instagram page, on X, across social media. Just look for 5 Plain Questions Podcast. You can also find us on the official 5 Plain Questions website at 11warriorarts.com. There you'll find this episode and past episodes of this podcast. And if you have a suggestion for someone for me to interview, or your organization wants to support this podcast, please check out the webpage and message me. I'd really like to hear from you. Well, that's it. You take care, and we will see you next time. This has been an 11 Warrior Arts production.